So, almost 24 hours we have got without the Fever's new signing attacking Fever.
Fever just signed, like, if you drew up a political activist and created one in a lab.
The Indiana Fever envisioned a bright future, with Caitlin Clark leading a talented roster, a solid supporting cast, and an excited fan base. But then, in a shocking twist, they signed Brianna Turner. Within 24 hours, what was expected to be a strategic move turned into a public relations nightmare, leaving fans and analysts puzzled and questioning the decision. What was meant to propel the team forward instead sparked controversy and uncertainty.
Have your team sign that could bring in and torch your locker room. I mean, literally come in, light it on fire, and burn the entire locker room down, and immediately raise the antennas of anybody in the fan base that's actually paying attention. And it makes you wonder, are we in a situation now with the Indiana Fever? Does their front office understand exactly what their new fan base is? And by new fan base, I mean
Fever fans didn't even get a chance to celebrate Brianna Turner's arrival before social media erupted. Why? Because Turner had a history of taking subtle jabs at Caitlin Clark and her supporters. Fans quickly unearthed her past tweets, and what they discovered wasn't just one-off comment, but a pattern of criticism. One tweet in particular ignited a firestorm. After Iowa celebrated their historic season, despite finishing as NCAA runner-up, Turner tweeted, "I will hold a celebration to honor the NCAA runner-up. All players and coaches expected respectfully. I'm confused. Is this what a runner-up typically does?" At first glance, it seemed like a simple question, but fans saw through it. It wasn't just a comment about Iowa's celebration. It was a direct shot at Caitlin Clark and the Hawkeye supporters. This was the same Caitlin Clark who had revolutionized women's college basketball, carried her team to the finals, and delivered record-breaking performances. What was supposed to be a fresh start quickly turned into a PR nightmare for the Fever.
I mean, look, they just inherited like three times or four times larger fan base than they ever had before. Who do you think we are exactly? I'm just wondering, because I think this team's going to be a lot better. I know Stephanie White's trying to build defense. I get it. Find it somewhere else. I'm just going to keep.
Indiana Fever fans were quick to take offense. This wasn't just any player making a comment about college sports. It was now a member of their team mocking the star they had rallied behind. It was a bad look, one Turner seemed completely unprepared for.
And by the way, she's already shown she is going to let what people say on.
At this point, you'd think Brianna Turner would realize her mistake, maybe backtrack, apologize, or clarify her intentions. But instead, when fans called her out, she doubled down. Her response? "Feel free to unfollow me or block me if that bothers you." That was it. No apology, no clarification, no attempt to connect with the Fever fan base. Just a blatant dismissal of the very people who were supposed to support her. And that's when everything spiraled out of control. The Indiana Fever front office likely didn't expect this level of backlash when they signed Turner. On paper, she was supposed to be a defensive asset, a veteran presence who could help Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston lead the team into the future. But within a day, she had turned the entire fan base against her. And once that happens, it's hard to come back from it. Social media erupted, with Fever fans furious. Many demanded Turner be cut from the team immediately, claiming there was no place for someone like her in Indiana. One fan tweeted, "We were excited about defense. Now we're defending Caitlin Clark from our own player." Another added, "She just got here, and she's already telling us to get lost? Nah, cut her now." And it wasn't just a few angry fans. This was an overwhelming reaction. Turner had successfully alienated the very people who were supposed to support her. The worst part, she didn't even seem to care. Let's take a step back, though, and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about one tweet. It's about the ongoing divide in the WNBA, a divide that Caitlin Clark never asked for. but somehow keeps finding herself at the center of. From the moment Clark entered the league, she's been treated differently. Not just by the media, but by other players as well. Some, like Angel Reese and Chindy Carter, have openly gone after her on the court. Others, like Brianna Turner, have taken shots online. The pattern is clear. There's a group of WNBA players who resent the attention Clark gets. Instead of embracing what she brings to the game, they've chosen to push back against it. Let's be clear. Caitlin Clark is not the first great player to enter the WNBA, but she is the first to bring this level of national attention. She's the first player in years to get casual fans invested. She's the reason why games are selling out and why TV ratings have skyrocketed. Yet some players still see her as a threat instead of an opportunity. Turner's tweet wasn't just about Iowa. It was about everything Caitlin Clark represents. It was about the changing landscape of women's basketball. It was about the fact that, for the first time ever, a rookie is the face of the league. That's what Turner was really pushing back against. And it backfired spectacularly. Now, the Indiana Fever organization finds itself in a tough spot. They thought they were making a smart basketball move, but instead, they've created a PR disaster. The fans are against Turner, and that's unlikely to change anytime soon. So, what does Indiana do next? Do they try to smooth things over, convince Turner to back off, and hope the fans move on? Or do they cut their losses now before this becomes an even bigger distraction? Here's the thing. This isn't just about Turner anymore. It's about the culture of the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark is their franchise player. She's the reason they're relevant again. Every move they make needs to be in her best interest, because without her, this team is just another struggling WNBA franchise. So, does keeping Turner really make sense? She's not a superstar. She's not an essential piece. She's a defensive role player who just made herself more trouble than she's worth. If the Fever truly want to build a championship culture, they need to start making decisions like a team that's serious about winning. Keeping a player who's alienated the fan base and disrespected the franchise star? That's not a winning move. That's a mistake at the end of the day. This is Caitlin Clark's team. And if Turner can't get with the program, then she doesn't need to be there. If the Fever front office is smart, they'll realize that sooner rather than later. One thing is clear. Indiana Fever fans are not going to forgive this. If Turner stays on the roster, this controversy isn't going away anytime soon. Brianna Turner's tweet debacle wasn't just another WNBA Twitter moment. It became a defining controversy for the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark, and the league itself. The backlash wasn't just from fans. It sparked discussions across sports media, basketball forums, and even among players. At first, it seemed like just another social media misstep, but it quickly turned into a crisis for the Fever. What was supposed to be a promising addition to their roster ended up being a PR nightmare, forcing the organization to reckon with the fallout. The ball is now in their court, and how they handle this situation could determine the future of both the team and its relationship with its fan base. The Indiana Fever stayed silent, likely hoping the controversy would blow over. But as time passed, it became clear that wasn't going to happen. The longer they waited, the worse it got. Fans were relentless, demanding answers. Would the Fever address the situation? Would Brianna Turner apologize? Would the front office act before this spiraled into a larger disaster? But instead of taking control, the situation continued to unravel. This wasn't just a social media battle anymore. It had real-world consequences. The Fever weren't just dealing with angry fans. They had a locker room to manage. Caitlin Clark had barely settled into her new role, and now she found herself on the same team as a player who had already publicly mocked her success. Just think about the tension. You walk into the gym ready to build chemistry, ready to work toward winning, and across the court is a teammate who's already taken shots at everything you represent. The unspoken tension in that locker room had to be palpable. The Fever coaching staff understood the gravity of the situation. They'd worked tirelessly to foster a positive environment where players felt respected, motivated, and focused on winning. Caitlin Clark was at the heart of that culture shift, and the last thing the team needed was a distraction, especially one coming from within. This wasn't just about Caitlin Clark versus Brianna Turner. It was about the message it sent to the entire team. Would the Fever allow a player to publicly disrespect their franchise star without consequence? Would they let animosity fester in the locker room? Would they allow Turner to divide the fan base at a time when Indiana was on the rise? If you're a rookie or a veteran in that locker room, you're asking yourself, what kind of organization is this? This is when leadership is tested. Great organizations handle these issues quickly before they have a chance to grow. But the Fever hesitated, and that hesitation created doubt. The question of Caitlin Clark's role in all of this couldn't be ignored either. Let's be clear. Caitlin Clark didn't ask for this drama. She's not the type to engage in Twitter feuds or stir up controversy. She wasn't calling for Turner to be cut or making demands. She was focused on basketball. But that doesn't mean she was blind to the situation. She knew exactly what was happening. She understood that the WNBA was full of players who resented her growing popularity. And she knew that Brianna Turner's tweet was just another symptom of a larger issue. While Clark is known for being mentally tough, it's also important to recognize that this situation wasn't fair to her. She should have been spending her time preparing for her first full season, building chemistry with her teammates, and focusing on leading the team to a championship. Instead, she found herself in the middle of a controversy she had no part in creating. And the worst part was that it wasn't the first time she had been put in this position. From Angel Reese's taunts to the Chindy Carter incident, Clark had been the target of unnecessary hostility since her WNBA debut. Yet despite all of this, she had never lashed out, never fired back. She had handled it with professionalism, and that's exactly why fans rallied behind her. They saw what was happening. They saw how Clark was constantly under attack, and they weren't going to let it slide anymore. That's why the situation with Turner escalated so quickly. Fever fans weren't just angry, they were protective. They knew what Clark meant to the team, and they weren't about to let someone tear her down before the season even started. The Fever were now at a crossroads. They could cut Turner and send a strong message that they wouldn't tolerate disrespect toward their franchise player. They could try to smooth things over and hope the fans would eventually let it go. Or they could do nothing, risking the alienation of their entire fan base. Let's be honest, there was only one right answer. Turner wasn't a vital piece of the team. She had been brought in for depth, not as a franchise-altering player. Keeping her wasn't worth the trouble. But instead of acting swiftly, Indiana dragged their feet. As they delayed their decision, Turner only made things worse. Her response to the backlash was the final nail in the coffin. Instead of acknowledging the situation or showing even a hint of humility, she doubled down. Turner posted, "I will not bend the knee or change my online advocacy efforts to appease others." That response was exactly what the Fever fans feared. A refusal to take accountability and a blatant disregard for the larger issues at play. Turner's refusal to soften her stance only solidified the fact that she wasn't the right fit for the Fever, and it made the decision for the organization that much clearer. The fans, who had already rallied behind Clark, now saw Turner as someone who didn't respect the team, its culture, or its star player. The Fever now had a choice: to act decisively and cut ties with Turner or let the situation fester. They needed to make a move before the locker room and the fan base became even more divided. In the end, this wasn't just about one player. It was about the future of the team, the integrity of the organization, and most importantly, protecting the relationship with their franchise star, Caitlin Clark. The Fever had to ask themselves, what kind of message would they send if they let Turner stay? Would they stand behind their star player, or would they let a public relations disaster continue to erode the team's future? Unfortunately, the longer they waited, the harder it became to fix the damage. The fans weren't going to forget, and the locker room wasn't going to forget. The Fever had to act, and they had to act fast. I don't care what the fans think. That was the moment when Brianna Turner lost the fan base completely. Not only did she refuse to own up to her words, but she also made it clear that she wasn't interested in winning them over. That was the tipping point. The real pressure shifted to the Fever front office. They weren't just dealing with fan outrage anymore. They were now in the midst of a full-blown PR disaster. This wasn't just about Turner anymore. It was about the entire Indiana Fever brand. The Fever had no choice but to distance themselves from Turner. Once that decision was made, it was only a matter of time. They'd seen the writing on the wall. Turner had gone from a new signing to a public enemy in less than 24 hours. She had alienated the fan base, created tension in the locker room, and embarrassed the franchise before even stepping on the court. It was a disaster from every angle. By then, there was no saving it.so. What happens next? Turner will likely be released, and the Fever will move on without her. But the real question is whether this will be the last time a player tries to take shots at Caitlin Clark. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, it's that Clark isn't going anywhere. She's here to stay, and the WNBA needs to start embracing that reality instead of fighting it. The league has a golden opportunity in Caitlin Clark. She's bringing in new fans, record viewership, and mainstream attention that the WNBA has never seen before. Yet, time and time again, players like Turner, Angel Reese, and Chindi Carter have tried to push back against it. The truth is, it's not working. Fans aren't turning against Clark. In fact, they're becoming more loyal to her. Every time a player tries to take her down, it only strengthens her story and makes her more compelling to fans. The Fever need to learn from this experience. They need to build around Clark, protect her, and create a culture that supports her success. She's not just a great player, she's the future of the franchise. And if the Fever make the right moves, she could become the face of the entire WNBA. But to do that, they need to be smarter than this. No more distractions, no more unnecessary drama. It's time to focus on basketball, and with Turner on her way out, the Fever can finally get back to what matters most: winning. This entire saga was avoidable. Turner could have kept her opinions to herself, focused on basketball, and avoided the drama. Instead, she chose Twitter battles over team chemistry, and now she's paying the price. But in the end, this isn't about Turner. It's about Caitlin Clark, the Fever, and the WNBA's future. And if there's one thing we know for sure, it's that Clark is built for this. The league better get used to it.